What if I told you that right now, as we speak, AI is defining what it means to be human in the workplace, and most organizations have no idea it's happening? Our recent guest, Christina Luconi, drops this powerful warning: if we don't define humanity, AI will do it for us. Welcome to the future of work with AI. Emily and I are absolutely fascinated by today's conversation. Christina is a Chief People Innovator who's been at the forefront of workplace transformation for decades. From the early days when HR was just becoming strategic, through the pandemic reshaping of work, and now into the AI revolution that's changing everything. Here's what struck me most about Christina's perspective. She's not afraid of AI. She's afraid of lazy humans who abdicate responsibility and let technology make decisions about humanity for them. She's watched companies pilot AI managers, actual artificial intelligence giving performance reviews to real people, and her response was simply, "That's bullshit." Today, we're diving deep into why HR leaders need to become AI ethicists, how the pandemic accidentally created better strategic thinkers, and why saying we're people first might actually put your company out of business. Christina's going to challenge everything you think you know about balancing efficiency with humanity and share why she believes we can exist or we can be excellent, but we have to choose. If you're ready to understand how to scale with soul in the age of algorithms, let's dive in.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Talent Talks this morning. I am Emily Alvarez, your host, and I am joined this morning by Christina Luconi. I am super excited. She is joining us from the Boston area, which is one of my favorite parts of the country on the East Coast. And Christina is a total amazing powerhouse in the area of cultural leadership and technology. Christina has been through the scalability of startups. And I have to say, Christina, I think in all the time I've been doing this, I don't know that I've met another person that I've connected with and been so in alignment with in the first conversation we've had right off the bat about humanity and technology. And so that's what we're talking about today is scaling with soul in the age of algorithms, which is a really great topic for Talent Talks and also kind of a hybrid into the future of work with AI. So Christina, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Emily.
Awesome. Well, tell us and our audience a little bit about your background and kind of what got you started in corporate America and then working with startups, because that's
Sure.
dear to
So
me.
I'll try to condense this because I've been working a really long time. But um, I was a psychology major. I thought I was going to go into some kind of clinical work after graduation, and then kind of decided halfway through my degree, I may not be as empathetic as I need to be to listen to people talk about their problems all day, every day. And had sort of an existential life crisis at age 20. And my dad, who was a serial entrepreneur, suggested this thing called human resources, which was relatively new. It had just evolved from personnel, which I don't even know what the heck it was back then. But,
Right.
HR was considered this new founded, more strategic thinking kind of thing when
Yeah.
I was graduating. And um, I took an internship in an HR team before my junior year of college, and the company went public a couple weeks into my internship. And, I was like an idiot 20-year-old, but I thought, oh my gosh, if you get really smart people working together on an idea, they can really build something that scales with substance and people make money and, build a great company. And that's what
Yeah.
I'm going to do because it's that easy, right? And yet that's actually what I pursued. And I sort of went into the working world when I graduated and said, okay, I'm going to index on two things. One is startups, because I realized as a kid right out of school, I mean, you think you have a degree, I'm ready to go. You know nothing really, right? So
Right.
startup, I realized if you're in a growth company and you have a good attitude and some aptitude and you raise your hand and say, I'll help, generally speaking, people are going to say, come on board, we need your help. And your job description goes from like this to this really
Yes.
quickly because there's just all hands on deck. So
Yeah.
that was a great environment for me to learn as quickly as I could. The other thing I sort of focused on was HR, and I wanted to really understand what that was about because I think in seeing the growth of that internship company that I was in go public, I knew there was something about the people coming together to do something in collaboration with one another that made that successful. And I figured that might be the area in which you could foster that.
Right.
And the thing that made it like really profound to me was when I started at that first job, it was a very, very forward-thinking company, which I was completely over my head at the time, right? Like, this is just what I thought companies were like, but this is
Right.
1990. We had women on the leadership team. We had a transgender person on the team in 1990.
That's like unheard of. Yeah.
We had people of color. I mean, we had the kind of company that companies would aspire to be today.
Right.
So that's how I started in work, and I thought this is very normal. It also created a platform for me to feel very comfortable as a total novice asking a lot of questions. And now we call that psychologically safe. I really hate that expression, but at the time it was very safe to ask questions and not just be the grunt who's, whatever. And I remember asking, like, I don't understand why this field is called human resources, right? My printer is a resource. A human being isn't. And it would strike me that if we're going to try to scale something, that can't be how we're thinking about people. And I was like really hung up on the semantics of what the damn field is called.
Yeah. Yeah.
And instead of saying, please shut up and go do your work, they said, why don't you go think about that differently? That is such an incredible gift to give to somebody.
So empowering.
Oh, it was like crazy. And none of these words
Yeah.
of empowerment or anything existed back then, but
Right.
that's how I felt. And that's what I did. So after 4 years of really trying to learn as much as I could about HR, I also went back to school at night, got a master's, and transitioned to the consulting side of the business. You couldn't consult unless you had a master's.
Right.
So I just took advantage of that education, so I could be with our clients and understand how they were thinking about it. And after 4 years, I thought, as only the arrogance of youth will allow you to do, okay, I know enough. I'm ready to go run the show. I mean, I laugh at myself now, but that's what I did, and
Right.
ended up kind of cold calling my way into a very hyper growth company in Boston called Sapient. Now it's Publicis Sapient. It's a huge corporation. But back then it was, 150 people, all of us in our 20s, which is very common today. But in 1995, it sure wasn't. And and then it went from there. So I sort of, was thinking about things like, humans and humanity and how that plays into work and culture before culture was really a word. I mean, it wasn't really
Right.
talked about back then. So, long story short, I'm old. I've been doing this a long time, but that's how I got started in it.
I love it. And I mean, you said a number of really amazing things, and your history really speaks for itself. And I think it's fascinating too, because I always joke that a lot of us get into HR accidentally. And you actually didn't. You were like, you're one of the few that was like, I actually pursued this career through almost the inception of when it started. But you call yourself a chief people innovator. And I love that because I agree with you. I think words are very important.
Hmm.
And people, a lot of times, myself included, all of us, I think we take words and semantics and all of that for granted. And we forget there's a lot of power behind what we say, what we do, what we invite people to do. Like in your case, they invited you to think about something differently at that
Hmm.
company. And that's where that chief people innovator came in, where it's like, I'm going to think about people not as transactionally, let's call it, because you're right. We can't think about people transactionally and the relationships we have with people transactionally. Um, and I think that's where human resources sometimes misses the mark is we get involved in the people metrics side of things, which are like the hard metrics,
Hmm.
in an attempt to be strategic, right? Because that's another thing you touched on that we're going to talk about is strategy in HR. Because back when HR first started, you had to be a strategist. You had to prove, right, that there was
Yeah.
ROI attached to everything that we did. We had to prove that we were retaining employees, that they were engaged, that our employees were producing, that there were performance indicators. But my opinion was back in like the even early 2000s to mid 2000s, teens, there was better culture in companies. I
Hmm.
feel it was more engagement with leadership. Um, and then something changed, right? I believe personally, a lot of that was technology inspired. I think technology changed a lot of the ways that we interacted with people. If you think about um, Zoom,
Yep.
think about accessibility,
Sure.
think about this little
Yep.
guy right here. Basically, everybody starts carrying around a computer in their pocket, right? Tablets. I mean, technology became very mobile, right?
Yeah.
So things
There's
and
pros
people,
and cons to that, I think.
yes. And I think we're going to talk about that, right?
Yeah.
So we got very mobile very quickly. And then the pandemic happens and we get even more mobile and even more isolated by this lack of connection with people. And so HR kind of went through an even more odd time because they became isolated as well.
Sure.
So now we have this isolation of now we're not defining what this interaction looks like, right? So now HR has to reimagine, like you said, what that role looks like.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about you wrote an article recently, and this ties into our technology conversation that we're going to get into because the ethos of this is really about tech and HR and culture in companies. Culture, a word we throw around quite a bit. I'm going to talk about human instead of
Okay.
culture. Let's replace culture with human for the purposes of this experiment, right?
Okay.
You wrote an article, if we don't define humanity, AI will do it for us. Let's talk a little bit about where this humanity meets the code and what your journey kind of looked like with this, starting
Sure.
off with tech.
Well, I mean, I think, that old adage, with age comes wisdom. I feel like I've been at this for a while, so I'm getting pretty wise. And
Yeah,
and what I mean by that is, when I started my career, people were sending fax machines were becoming popular, and people were like all excited and nervous because they
right,
used to FedEx documents to each other. Like, what a complete colossal waste, right? Like, you couldn't email, you couldn't whatever, but you'd like FedEx a document to somebody in the next town over for 20
yeah,
bucks, whatever it costs. And then all of a sudden fax machines happen and you could do it way quicker. And then
right,
email evolved and you'd attach things. But
right,
with every technological advance I've seen over the last, 3 decades, there's always somebody who gets up in arms about, oh my gosh, this is a change. This is going to be different. This makes me nervous. I think people are, lots of people don't love change. And yet, then once they
right,
embrace it, it's like, oh, this is a game changer. I think AI is just more of that. I think the thing that's really unique about it is that it's happening so quickly. I mean, it has happened, I think, probably quicker than anything else I've seen in my
right,
lifetime. But I was never, because I've lived through so many advances in technology, I don't think this one scared me. I think, when we started talking about it when I was at my last job, there was a lot of pushback of everything that could be wrong with it, right? It won't feel human. It'll take away what makes us special. Oh my God, my job might be lost,
right.
whatever. Like, this is a super harsh statement, but I remember when I was like learning about change management 20 years ago or something, I remember a friend and I working on a project and we're like, change or die, right? Like, we're sort of like, businesses are like Darwin. Like, if you don't evolve, you're gonna die.
Yes.
And
You're
I
the
feel
shark
like
or you're the food,
that's
basically.
exactly right. And
Yeah,
I think with regards to AI, I sort of looked at it the same way, where I'm like, oh my God, the skepticism's crazy, but like, will some people lose jobs? Probably, potentially, because some
Yeah,
people lose jobs, and like the auto workers in Detroit lost jobs because we automated the factory line, right? Like,
right,
not that I'm an advocate of losing jobs, but we have to evolve, and there's new jobs to be had and new skills to be learned and all of that,
right,
right? And that's all to help us advance. But I think with I look at it as, hey, everyone, like this is an opportunity to take the elevator instead of the stairs. All of the
right,
crappy tactical stuff that we do on repeat every day, what if we could automate some of those things and really optimize our time and energy around the things that are way more meaningful to people, right?
right.
If we, oh, sorry, my dog just decided to lose it, and I don't
Oh,
know, I
you're
apologize. We're
fine.
gonna have to listen to him bark for a second. Sorry.
No
Um,
worries.
he's little, so he's a little bark. Um, so I think that being able to understand what could be, what could it allow us to do, and instead of getting worked up about it, figure out the benefits we could get to it, and then work really hard on the pieces that are really important to us, the
Right.
humanity side, if you will.
Yes. Yeah, and I agree with you. I believe that any kind of tech that comes in is a disruptor, right? No matter what it is for
Sure.
the most part. I mean, and we look at this in organizations all the time, um, where it just organizations adopt new stuff constantly. It could be a new CRM, right? It could be we're switching from, Microsoft Teams to Slack. It could be, it could be anything. Like there are changes that happen in organizations all the time. I mean, the AI stuff, frankly, for me, reminds me of the dot-com stuff, right? That we
Hmm.
went through.
Yep.
Um, we went through as a Gen X, we went through Y2K. They told us the world was going to freaking
Implode.
end,
Yep.
right? We were all going to die. Like it was going to shut everything down, and like we all had, only a short time left before everything would crash, right?
Yep.
So you kind of hear in my generation at least, all of these like I guess existential doom stories that you kind of just are like, well, all right. I grew up in existential doom and crisis, so I'm not really that afraid anymore. And I've seen some of it, and like it sucks and it's terrible, but like we survived it.
Yep.
Um, but I think AI is a little different than what a lot of people are used to in technology because um, it, in a lot of cases, does feel and is packaged to be so human in a
Hmm.
lot of ways. Like it's really one of the first technologies we've had that does very closely mimic human beings and human behaviors. But what's interesting to me about AI is that for a technology that is so pretty, I find it to be very transparent. Like
Hmm.
people are doing literally no research about it or like not even bothering to learn anything about it when it's so transparent. You can literally ask it about itself and it will tell you about itself.
Right.
And but people don't have any desire to like
I,
learn about it or to figure out how this can help me if I leverage it to help me do A, B, C, D. And almost everybody that I've talked to that has done that is like, oh, this is not the big scary robot from the War of the Worlds that I thought it was going to be. Um, but I also believe that because it so closely mimics humans,
hmm
that is the fear-based component of it because we don't know necessarily when we're talking to a human and when we're not
hmm
sometimes. And that's the fear factor, right? Is like,
Sure.
I don't know when it's human and when it's not. And then we get into like ethical type questions, right? But I think that is where we have an obligation as humans again to understand what we're using. We have an
Yeah.
obligation to, if we're talking about like we care about humanity, then just like with any other tech, you need to know and be responsible for what you're doing with it. If you
Absolutely.
care about how it's impacting other humans, like, let's be real.
I agree with you, and I'm gonna probably say something fairly divisive, but I think I don't know the cause of it, but I think as a society we're getting a little bit lazy. Um, because we have a lot of access at our fingertips now,
Yes.
which is pro and con, right? Like I grew up, remember school, like we had to go to the library and look at encyclopedias. I mean, crazy. And I remember when I first got access to the internet, I went and did a report. I had to study Kickapoo Indians in third grade,
Oh
and there
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
nothing on them at the library. I had like the crappiest report. And once I got internet access, I went back and I Googled and I got so much information and I wrote a paper on the Kickapoo Indians and handed it in to my parents as like a 25-year-old. Just like,
Yeah.
oh my God, look at the benefits of like what I
Look at the
could have done,
difference.
in third grade. Some crazy behavior. But I think the thing that stands out to me though is like people are willing to abdicate responsibility because it's easier. Like I sat at a conference last week and I'm looking at all these people, no shade on the conference, like it's fine, but I don't generally warm to them because I think oftentimes you see people kind of passively sitting, taking notes and hoping they're going to get some silver bullet of knowledge.
Right.
And unless you apply what you're learning, it's like, what's the point?
Right.
And I feel the same way about AI or other technologies where it's just like people are willing to like, hey, everything, if you just dumb it down to efficiency, like you're not going to get anything, right? So I have to force myself to do things like if I'm writing an article, I will not touch AI until after I've written it and then say, please clean it up because it'll make it
Yep.
sound better. But like,
Yep.
I don't want to say, I want to write an article on AI and humanity. What do you got for me? Right?
Right.
Because I would make myself so damn lazy and candidly, like, lose my curiosity, I don't think efficiency is always the end goal,
Right.
right? Um, I want myself to be curious. I want myself to push myself. And then if I have some additional aid to like clean up my mess, awesome.
Right.
But
Yep.
that's not my starting place.
Right.
And I think sometimes we just say, hey, I'll put it in somebody else's hands. It's easier for me to do this. So I think you're right. But like, is it very human? It can be. But
Right.
there's also a lot of subpar humans. So I don't know that I would assume that this thing that I'm getting is awesome um, by my standard.
Right. Well, and that's the point, I think, with generative AI or with AI in general, is that because of the lack of understanding about it, there is this general consensus that, oh, I need to write a report on 1984 by George Orwell. So I'm going to sit down and I'm going to type into ChatGPT, write me an essay on 1984 by George Orwell.
Yep.
And it's going to write me an essay, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to change some stuff up because if my professor runs it through,
Right.
uh, plagiarism software or runs it through something that generates for ChatGPT, or it might have a bunch of M dashes in there, or whatever the case may be, I need to change that, right? That's how a lot of people are using it.
100%.
For people like you and me, we're using it like a mirror,
Yes.
which is how it's supposed to be used, which is I want to sit down and I know how to critically think. So, what I'm going to do is I know, because I've probably read 1984 500 times, I can probably sit down and write an essay on that just on the fly in like 20 minutes, right?
Yep.
And you could probably give me a topic out of that book, and I could probably write an essay on it and hand it in to you in 20 minutes. Now, I might put it into ChatGPT because it's 20 minutes and I'm a sloppy, like, I can't get my thoughts together like that in 20 minutes. So I use it to like help me structure it into
Yep.
whatever. But if it added something in there that I know is not factual, I'm going to proofread it and be like, that doesn't belong in there. And so I'll kick it out, you know? So the thing is, we have to be able to do that with it. But that's the difference between using it in a human way versus using it in a robotic way.
That's
So
right.
if you're a human that's using it in a robotic way, then you are actually taking the humanity out of it, which is the
Yeah,
irony to this whole situation. Versus you and me that are like, wait a minute, I need to use this as a tool to help me, just like I would use spell check, just like I
right.
would use email, just like I would use chat, just like I would use a Google search or whatever the case is. And so we're using it to improve our process
Yep.
versus to
Replace.
replace. Yes.
Yeah,
And so what we're talking about now is craftsmanship.
right.
And we're talking about empathy. And these are ways that the technology cannot replace us because the technology cannot, at least at this point in time, and they're talking about doing this in some degree, but it's never going to be the same as a human,
Right.
cannot make decisions. It cannot make decisions based on feeling.
Yeah.
And so when it can't do that, you lose the human side of it because humans uniquely have feelings that we can
They,
only understand.
they do. I think the other piece of being human that probably, many people don't love, but I think it's the essence of being human is we're messy, right?
Yes,
Not a straight line to success.
absolutely.
Like if I think about the things that have allowed me to live the life that, I'm really proud of at this point, a lot of it's come from failures and messes and how I responded to those, et cetera. And,
Yeah.
you know, I, I, did you ever see that movie? I think it was called Her with Joaquin Phoenix. And he
Oh,
was,
I loved it. It's
he was
fantastic.
like in love
Yes.
with his phone, right? And
Way ahead of its time. Yeah.
way ahead of its time. And I remember thinking like, I can totally see why that would be appealing, right? Because having been in a people role, like the amount of people that avoid difficult conversations
Right.
or, whatever it is. And if you have something, it's why I love my dog, right? That's why I have a dog, two dogs,
Yeah.
because they show me unconditional love, right? But that's
Right.
like not normal. Humans don't show, like, I'd like to think they show unconditional love, but like, you get into arguments with people, you have different points of view. Like, that's
Right.
what makes life interesting, I think. And if you're just like, tell me what I want to hear, um, boy, I think we're missing out on something that's profoundly human. And I was on a panel about 2 weeks ago, and one of the conversations was that there's some stuff being piloted with digital or AI managers.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I
Like
have
agents.
not heard of that, but like you would
Yeah.
report to somebody who's actually an AI
Yeah.
thing, not a real human.
Yeah.
And they said, "What do you think of that?" And I like literally, I kind of choked on my words and was incredibly unprofessional. But the one statement that came out of my mouth was, "That's bullshit." Because candidly, like nothing, if you're trying to grow and build a career, like nothing replaces your manager looking you in the eyes and saying, "Emily, what an amazing job you did," or
Right.
whatever. Like, I don't want to hear that from a piece of technology. I want
Right.
to know that I did good work and somebody's proud of me, right? And
Right.
and the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I don't know that everyone agrees with that sentiment, but I think that's an incredibly important thing we can't lose.
Right. Well, I would say that first of all, that's horrifying. Right. I mean, I'm not surprised. I'm not
No,
surprised
I'm not surprised either.
knowing, yeah,
But
knowing what's
yeah,
going
I
on.
agree it's horrifying.
Yeah, but it's what I would say to something like that is right now we have companies and a workforce that is crying out on the regular for the people that employ them to see them as human, right?
Yep.
And people are struggling right now, and I know you and I talked about this on our pre-call, to even have tough conversations in the workplace right now about
Yep,
like DEI is a perfect example. You say DEI in a company right now, and you might as well have called somebody a mother effer, right?
right.
You can't have conversations about uh performance improvement plans usually without somebody getting defensive or not understanding why they're being called in. You can't, human resources is not trusted in most companies right now. And that's their fault, let me tell
Yeah,
you. There's no strategy being had in a lot of these manager positions because these managers are ill-equipped to give feedback and to manage people because they're not people, right?
yep,
So we have a uniquely human problem going on in companies right now. And so to replace managers with a robot or an agent, I'm assuming it's an agent is what we're talking
yep,
about here. Um, for a job like that is, first of all, incredibly insulting to your employees, but
yep,
also there is no way in hell an employee is going to trust and connect with somebody that is not human, like you said, because there is already that trust problem happening in that company. And then to go in and
sure.
do something like that
Yep,
in a stage where we're already not trusting the AI and the technology because as teams, most of these individuals can't have the conversation at their companies about AI because there's no plan. No one knows what the
yep,
hell's going on. You have 95% shadow users in your organization using AI for you don't know what. And they don't trust you or the technology because they're hearing on the regular that AI is going to come in and take their job.
right.
Now you want to replace their manager with one?
Yeah, it's
Good
crazy.
luck.
It's
Like
crazy.
that, I mean, but again, it's I'm not surprised to hear this because a lot of these companies that have these problems with AI adoption, it starts like this. This is how it
Sure.
starts,
But I think
right?
it's like, I wonder if those same companies would have as difficult a time with the adoption if they dialed it back for a minute. So what I mean by that is, I don't like blaming the pandemic for anything, but I do think that
Sure.
something happened during the pandemic, which, at least in my experience and what I saw a lot with companies around me, was um, the vast majority of at least tech companies, which is where I've spent my time, were in person. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
most people were working in an office,
Right.
and I remember the day that my company said, "Hey, there's something going on in the world. We're going to send people home." We were trying to be really humane. I think that we were the first tech company in Boston to send people home like a day earlier than everyone else did.
Right.
And our people lost their minds because they said, "Oh my gosh, like, what do you mean? We're like, we collaborate. I need whiteboards.
Unit.
I need to be with my people. That's,
Right.
we have trust and all of that." We're like, clearly I'm not a mind reader, but we're like, pack up your stuff. Thank God we have laptops and Zoom because, we can make this work for 2 weeks. We'll see in April.
Right.
And human beings are resilient. It was a shit show, pardon my
Yeah.
language,
Right.
for several weeks because everybody, the one great thing about it was common playing field for
Yeah.
companies that had the technology and the Zooms or the Teams or whatever you use. Like, the fact that everyone was behind a screen at the same time was actually really advantageous because
Yeah.
everyone had bumps and bruises along the way, right?
Sure.
Um, but all of a sudden, you spend that time at home and people go from chaos to "I figured it out." And somehow what was replaced was, "Hey, we think we want to go back to the office." And all of a
Right.
sudden, it was like, "No, no, I can be productive from home." And it became much more focused on my convenience and what's best for me than what's best for the company.
Right.
And I really believe in the balance of me and we. And what I mean by that is,
Yes.
we as human beings like need to make what we think is a fair wage. We need to be challenged. We need to feel like our work matters. All of those things are the things that we should look for when we take a job.
Right.
But it's also a job, right? Like
Yes.
you also are obligated to fulfill the duties of the job.
There's
And
accountability.
there's accountability to it. And it's not just all about your own convenience, it's about what you're contributing back. And if your
Right.
company has been really, forthcoming about the fact we're going hybrid because we do believe some amount of in-person collaboration time is important. The number of people that are like badge swiping and ditching or whatever just so they can check the box but don't understand the importance of it, like
Right.
I'm floored.
Yeah.
But so that's like the people piece that I think is really broken. But on the company piece, I think there's an obligation to create an environment that will people will want to engage with, right? And I
Yes.
feel
Yep.
like both sides have just sort of abdicated responsibility. So human beings are like taking to social media and just the number of memes that are about how bad work sucks and whatever is soul sucking. And I really don't think it has to be like that. I think if companies were engaging and really spending the time of what kind of company are we trying to build? It's not just
Yep.
about making money and being profitable. Of course, that's why businesses exist. But what do we want to be known for? Are we just
Right.
like hanging up a shingle and doing this thing because we think we're going to make money? Are we creating an environment that people are going to thrive in and give their best work to and ultimately, hopefully, allow us to build the best possible company? So I think shifts need to happen really on both sides.
Sure. Oh, I agree with you. And I think it to your point, I think the word we're looking for is performative, right? It's
Mm,
become performative.
yeah,
Back to your potential AI managers, right? That would be performative. Like to have a fake manager or a robotic manager that is giving, I don't know, performance reviews or whatever, that's performative. We
yeah,
have a manager there to tick a box that we did this.
yep,
Same exact thing with workplace culture, or which is, again, I hate that word now because it's grown to mean something it doesn't. And that's why I don't like using it, because people think like culture is like something for the company. It's
right.
not. It's the people. It's
That's
every
exactly right.
person is a culture themselves. They have their own culture. And so it's interesting to me that companies, when COVID happened, people got re-immersed into their culture. That's what
Mhm.
happened, right? We went from having a lifestyle where we were in a routine of wake up, take our kids to school if you have kids, or do whatever, make breakfast, have your coffee, take a shower, do all that, go to the gym, whatever you do in the morning, go to the office, work 8 hours, go home, do your thing, go to bed, wake up, do the whole thing all over again, right? Rinse, wash, repeat, do all of it. Um, Now with COVID, everybody's reintroduced back into their culture. Lifestyle changes. We're back with our kids in the house. Everybody's ready to kill each other, but we are like spending actual quality time together, right? Which is something most of us had not done with our families in a very long time.
That's right.
So it reignited that human side of us again to be like, I haven't done this much parenting in a long time. I didn't know my kid couldn't read and was in the fifth grade. What the hell, man? That's not a true story on my thing, by the way. But no, no shit. I had a friend that like their kid like was having a hard time reading in like the third grade. And I was like, she was like, I work like, 60 hours a week. Like
Yep,
I didn't realize she was struggling that bad. But because of COVID, she like was able to see this about her kid and get her kid into like the classes and stuff to get her caught up to where she needed to be. But we changed our routines. Parents didn't have daycare to pay for anymore.
yep,
They didn't have we didn't have wear and tear on our vehicles and driving expenses and gas and like all of this stuff. Yeah, our grocery bills went up through the roof, but I mean, we didn't have all this stuff, right, that we had to deal with. And so then we
Yeah,
push people back to go to the workplace, but nothing changed at the workplace.
right.
In fact, it got worse because we got lazier,
Yeah,
to your point earlier.
yeah,
And then everybody wants us back in the office, but nothing's changed. Maybe they hung a new poster on the wall. Maybe they put a kombucha machine in the break room. Maybe they, like, I don't know, said we'll have catered lunch on Fridays. Guess what? It's not enough
right.
because you didn't talk to your people and say what really matters to you.
That's exactly right. I mean, I think that people really misunderestimate the importance of why. Why are we doing this? Why is this
What
important to us?
drives? Yes.
Let's have
And
a
what makes
conversation.
it personal to you?
Right. And I feel like the companies that like really screwed it up for themselves were those that had been, thriving prior to the pandemic. Everyone went home and then they asked their people, what do you want? Now, I
Right,
know you're a parent. Like if I asked my kids, what do you want for dinner? I'm going to get two different answers and I'm going to piss somebody off.
right.
So the way we approached it was to say, this is what we're thinking. This is why we're thinking of it. Give us some feedback.
Yes.
And I won't say it was like, I mean, like any company, we like struggled with some people, but generally
Sure.
speaking, people understood. And, there was some beauty in hybrid, right? For us, that was the right choice for our company because
Right.
so much of it was based on collaboration.
Sure.
To just say everybody would be remote forever, we would be giving up one of the things that made us incredibly unique and special. Um, but you're right. People we were getting stuff from, especially younger people that were like, that started their career during the pandemic and were like, what, I'm not going to commute. Will you pay for my gas? And it's like, commute, you live 10 minutes from the office. What are you talking
Right.
about? A
Right.
commute, like, is that a heavy lift for you to spend 10 minutes getting somewhere? And they were really difficult about it. But generally speaking, once we took the time to say, this is why, and by the way, when you focus all on you, like we're telling you what our clients and our business needs as well, like we try to really focus on the intersection of what's best for the customers or clients, what's best for the company, and what's best for the people. And if you can hit that sweet spot in the middle, you're kind of golden, right?
Yeah.
But if you're only thinking about the company, for example, and none of the other pieces, your clients are going to walk away, your people are going to be pissed off and leave. So you got to try to really index on what's going to speak to the majority. And it's not always going to resonate with 100% of the people, and
Oh.
that's okay because I really don't believe every company is for every person, right?
Mhm.
There are some amazing companies out there, right? I look at, the best places to work list every year,
Yeah.
and I'm like, yeah, there's like 50% of these companies I'm pretty sure I'd get fired from like within 2 days because their values don't align with mine. That doesn't make
Exactly.
them not an awesome company, just not an
Doesn't.
awesome company for me.
Right.
And I think that's our obligation as a person, as long as you have the type of role where you can actually choose, what kind of
Yeah.
companies you want to work for. Find something that aligns with what you care about.
Right. No, and I 1,000% agree with you. And that's part of the hiring process, right? Is we have to hire people that align with our values as an organization.
That's right.
And if we are doing that, then we should, in theory, hire correctly every time.
That's right.
And we should, in theory, it shouldn't matter what they look like, who they are, what background they have, whatever, like, and then you get DEI being followed because,
That's
right,
right. I mean, but
100%.
if we like lay off the DEI with the,
Throw the
quotas,
baby out with the
stuff like
bathwater.
that's not what's really critical to me. I think if you
No.
are like a forward-thinking business, take the label off it.
Yep.
Diversity of thought is
It will just
really
happen.
critical,
Yes.
right? really
Yeah.
critical to a business because you
Yes.
need to understand how
That's
your
what I
customers
mean. It
connect.
just happens
It just
because
happens. But
it
if
just
you really
happens.
believe that, diversity of thought, generally speaking, comes packaged really differently, right?
Yes.
Different generations
Yes.
or different
That's what I
people's
mean.
lived experiences,
Yep.
et cetera. So rather than focusing on the highly politicized DEI, start with what's going to get us the most robust set of ideas to
That's
make
what
the
I mean.
company
Yep.
thrive.
Yes.
I mean, it's like, I don't think that's rocket science, but I'm
No,
just
it's
bored at
not,
the,
but for some reason, companies don't hire that way.
no,
And robots certainly don't hire that way because they look at numbers. They don't
right,
look at, they look at commonalities, right? It's patterns. And that's why it's incredibly difficult to factor bias out because you have to give it criteria,
that's
right?
right.
But you said something really interesting I want to go back to is you said, companies, when we talk about bringing people back into the workplace, you said, companies need to worry about, in this, like the client, if you want to look at this from this perspective, the client, then the company, then their people, like there's a direct correlation. I would go the opposite direction. I would say people, company, client, because if you want to know how your employees are doing and how they feel about your company, take a look at your customer reviews.
Hmm.
That's always what I tell clients is if your customer reviews, especially surrounding things like your product
Hmm.
and your client success, um, and your sales team, if there are comments, negative comments about those three things in there, chances are people at your company are not very happy.
Yep,
Because when those three things suffer, it's typically because the salesperson is pushy and doesn't give a shit. They just are looking to fill a quota. They don't care how
yep,
they do it, right? They'll sell shit on a shingle. They don't care. Your customer service team probably burned out. They don't really care either. They don't
yep,
care to help somebody to the extent of their ability. I mean, with my team, my old team at Applicant Pro, we would bend over backwards to help clients. Like I would be like, I don't care. I will like, as long as you're polite and you'll listen
yep,
and I'll listen to you and we collaborate and work together, like I will go to the moon and back for you. I don't care, and then your product, if your craftsmanship starts to suck,
yep,
a lot of times it's because people are not doing their due diligence in that manufacturing process of some kind. So,
yeah.
looking at that, that's a good way to indicate like if that is not congruently doing well, then you probably have a problem with burnout, siloing, people not talking to each other, not respecting each other. There's something in that process that's broken. And
I don't disagree with you at all. I think we're probably saying similar things,
yeah.
just I tried to do it as like a Venn
Oh
diagram
yeah,
with
yeah,
in the
yeah, for
middle.
sure. And
But
I
I,
think
I,
it's
I definitely agree with you. I think the thing that I get hung up on is a lot of companies like over index and said things like we're people first.
right.
That stresses me out because I
Yeah.
think if you're people first, you're going to put yourself out of business. I've
Oh, for
watched
sure.
so many companies,
Yeah.
trying to bend over backwards to accommodate their people and like, not solve the real problem.
Well, we've become enablers. That's the
Right.
thing.
We're
We've
total
we've
enablers.
started enabling because to your point, it's like we have people that say, I don't want to come back to the office or I don't want to participate in these ways anymore, right? They think they have the upper hand. When people do when this type of stuff happens, right? It to me indicates like to your point, like it's almost like a power struggle. It's like
Mhm.
you need me so bad in this position that I'm going to say, I want you guys to do this or else this, right? And to your point, like I restructured an entire team of people that way and was like, look, this is the new situation. If you don't like this, then this might not be the job for you. And that was perfectly okay.
Yep.
I lost like 5 people in like 2 weeks And I was like, you know what? I knew it was going to happen. I knew it was coming. But at the end of the day, to your point, like
But the point is, Emily, you were
I was
honest and forthcoming
transparent.
about it.
Yes, totally
And
transparent.
people then are allowed to make their own choices. It doesn't
That's
mean they
human.
hate you, they
Right.
hate it's just not
Right.
for them. And that's
But
okay.
that's the humanity that has to come with those decisions. And I think people respect that when
I
it's
totally agree.
transparent. And
Yep.
I think also HR, back to spinning this into technology and HR, I think part of the issue we have with these organizations in general is we're not zooming out to do what I call my acid test, which is in 5 years, if you look at your organization, to your point, could they stand the test of time? Would they be
Hmm.
put out of business because
Hmm.
of this enabling or this lack of accountability? Because your human resources, human is accountability. Human is I care enough about you to say, human to human, you did an amazing job, or this needs to be improved on, or like we have a policy that
Hmm.
needs to be followed. There are rules here
Hmm.
for our safety, your safety, everybody's benefit and safety, because we are an organization and we're allowed to do that. And if you want to
Yep,
work here, these are our values. But yes, you're right. They have to drive everything that we do in
they
an
do.
organization. So where do you think that HR kind of fits into facilitating of this type of stuff?
I think we're at a point where, for years, it was seen as either the complaint department or where you go to get fired. And then it evolved
Right.
into the touchy-feely crap and had to overcome that. Like if you talk to any HR leader 10 years ago, like, why did you get into this? I love people. Like,
I'm a
if that's
therapist.
your answer, like, I will not hire you, right? I mean, we
Right.
all love people, but like, that's not why you take that job because then
Right.
I hear that as you're not going to make hard decisions
Right.
and that kind of stuff. And to today, where I think going back to the pandemic for a minute, I think all of a sudden it became this catalyst for people, forward-thinking people to step up and shine in a way that they had never been able to before. Because all of a sudden, CEOs are looking around saying, I have no idea what to do. No
Right.
one did. I mean, it was like a collective, universal, holy crap, what is happening right now? And
Right.
people were tasked with, what do we do?
Right.
And for those more strategically minded people, I think they were like, oh my gosh, I get to rewrite the rules. Like, how do we make this work? What is going to make us a really healthy company? How
Right.
do we want to communicate with our people, et cetera? And I think it became an amazing time to be a chief people officer, if you will. The thing that I think has been really interesting is that I don't know that the folks playing the role have allowed themselves to step up and lean into it as quickly as needed. So, for example, at the same time the pandemic was happening, we were still having a lot of conversations with, people leaders saying, I want a seat at the table. I have a
Yeah.
senior title, but no, I hate that expression too. But I'm not involved in the strategic conversations or whatever.
Right.
I don't think it's about having the seat at the table. I think it's about what you do with that seat when you have it.
1000%.
And all of a sudden you're being asked to have a point of view. You're being asked to take a bold stand. And I think for a lot of people, they weren't ready for that yet, or they weren't ready to put themselves out there and be bold and audacious because that's not honestly how they had been trained to behave. But I think for those people that did, wow, they really navigated an incredibly unique period of time in a really healthy way. And there's a lot
Yeah.
of companies, I'm so proud to watch how they navigated it
Oh, yeah.
and how they led their people through it. We also saw a huge surge of people leaving the field. I think people were so burned out by the end of it that they just said, I am done. I am done
Right.
with this job. And I was floored, like around 2023, especially in Boston, which is where I spend most of my time, the number of chief people officer roles that were available was huge because it feels like collectively everyone just tapped out.
Right. Well, and they did. I think they did because to your point, like the future, I think HR for a long time, and I've talked I think I talked to you about this and I've written on this, is that I believe HR became over the years almost a cultural emergency room,
Mm-hmm.
right? It was like they
Well
were
said.
just triaging issue after issue after issue, a lot of which they weren't trained to do,
Right.
right? They're not, HR people are not, contrary to popular belief and some of it their belief, not therapists,
Right.
and are not there to get involved in like drama, right? And so I think what happened was we had a department of people, or a not a department, but a role, right? Overarching role of insert HR title here of any kind,
Yep.
was already burned out because most of the time they're operating in all paper. They're, I mean, I don't know a single HR person in my career that I have walked into their office and it has not been a disaster. Let me just say, I'm not, and that's nothing against HR people. It is a literal,
There's so much going on.
it is a literal physical representation of what is going on in their role. No
Yep.
shit.
Yep. I think that's the
So
cycle.
yeah, so I think they have been slowly but surely getting burned out over time, not being strategists. They've not learned how to talk to CFOs, they've not learned how to talk to CEOs, they've
Right.
not learned how to talk to anybody, but they've made no effort to learn either. And
Yep.
so then to your point, they are now being asked after a pandemic, mind you. So now shit's really screwed up. Now they're being asked to come to the table, but they never learned any of this stuff along
That's
the
right.
way.
That's right.
And so now they have big problems they've got to address with no understanding of how to do it. And now in comes little old AI
Yep.
walking in, meandering on into the picture, and they can't even fathom how to deal with that. That's
Right.
like that's like
Right.
for to your point, a lot of people, the nail in the coffin. They're like, I don't even want to touch this with a 10-foot pole.
Yep.
So it gets put over to IT to deal with. And that's usually not the right fit either. So again, I think what we have is a training issue. We have a resources issue. It's, and but to also to you were just at a conference. I was at a conference with our team like is it a month ago already? Almost a month ago. And we were, I think, one of the only companies there that had an AI booth.
Hmm.
And I've reached out to a lot of people talking about AI, and the response I get back is like, well, we're not ready. We're not there. I don't know. I don't know what to do. I'm interested in learning about it, but for our organization, I don't know. And it's like, okay, well, they're not making any even effort to like take a
Yeah. Bring
call
it
about it.
along.
Yeah. So there's a lack of even preparing themselves for this.
Yeah.
So I think
Which
it
makes sense, right? Because if you think
yeah,
about like the history of HR, like everything's evolving at the same time. So the
right,
history of HR used to be like very compliance driven or tactically driven. Enforce. Like
right.
you want to really stress me out, like say policy. Like I
Oh,
hate policies, right? I mean,
yeah,
like I'm a firm believer in guidelines. There's a couple
yeah.
things we need to pay attention to, but generally speaking, use your best judgment.
There's gray area.
There's gray. I live in the
Yeah,
gray, not in
I do
black
too.
and white.
Yeah,
And I think historically HR was very black and white.
right,
Life is not black and white. So I have a hard time with that. So obviously, if you throw something like AI into the mix, that's, of course, it's going to cause more traditionally trained people an abundance of stress because it's very out of whack with how they're used to behaving and thinking.
right. Yeah, no, I agree totally. I totally agree with you. And I think it's going to be interesting to see where it goes with corporations, companies, and who's going to be the one that they ultimately decide, because it'll be different for every organization who's in
Yeah.
charge of it.
Yeah.
My opinion is that that HR needs to head it up and be the one that oversees it.
Yeah. Because ultimately, it's a huge change
Right.
initiative, right?
Well, it's a change initiative. It affects every person in the organization, every human, and there's a certain amount of like psychological, I know your favorite term, psychological safety that goes
Yep,
around it, right?
sure.
And also there are legalities that go
Right,
into it, right? Which is something HR needs to be on top of.
right, which I haven't seen nearly enough of yet,
Oh
right?
my gosh.
Like it's
Every
like the Wild West right now, and I think that
I've
will.
told I cannot tell you, I probably said it 500 times at the conference we were at. Every single HR person in this country right now needs to become an AI ethicist. Every single one of them needs to read up on what this technology can do. If there is legislature passed in your state, you need to know about it. California, Governor Newsom just passed legislation in California like 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, maybe three, I think. So you got to know this stuff. This
Yep.
is very important. But I think every leader should be aware that this is very scalable, very doable, but we have to make our humans the star of the story,
Hmm.
which is HR's job
Yep.
to really understand how to reach people.
Well said. I agree.
So, yeah. So, any last thoughts? I mean, I know we're kind of out of time and you're at peopleinnovations.com if anybody wants to look you up, find you on LinkedIn, but
Yeah,
I
you can
mean,
find
any
me on LinkedIn.
any final thoughts that we can.
Uh, Um, just, I wish collectively as a society we'd hold ourselves to a higher standard. You know, I
Yeah,
think I grew up in the age of watching Michael Jordan, right? Where,
I did
like,
too. Yeah,
and I was always floored by the fact that that guy won so many championships and he himself was extraordinary, right? Maybe one of the best to ever play.
yeah,
But he knew he couldn't do it alone. He knew he needed that team to achieve the goals. And they would win a championship. And then the guy would get back on the floor when the stadium emptied and go shoot free throws because he knew that's what was going to keep him the best. That image of him doing that has never left me,
right,
because I feel like sometimes, like, easier sometimes is better, right? Don't get me wrong. I outsource grocery shopping now because I don't, I have a limited amount of time and it's a pain in the butt. Not something I enjoy doing. That being said, as I was thinking about AI and stuff, I'm like, I am at the point now where, like, Instacarts, like, do you want to just reorder? Like, I could reorder groceries in 3 seconds because I could just order what I ordered last week. And yet, by doing that, I'm giving up wandering down an aisle and being like, oh my God, there's a fruit I haven't seen in a long time, or be inspired to make something different or whatever.
right.
And just like, I think if we just optimize around what's efficient or what's easy, we are going to lose out on the beauty of life. And I refuse to go there personally.
Yeah, oh,
So I'm on a
yeah,
mission to try to help companies be better. You can exist
yeah.
or you can be excellent. I want to work with people who want to be excellent. And that's a lot of hard work and discipline, but it's
I
worth
love
it.
that. I love that. Yeah, discipline, designing with empathy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a theme that keeps coming up for me, designing with empathy. Yeah. Well, Christina, this has been absolutely wonderful having you on the show. I would love to have you back on sometime, and do this again, and especially as we kind of follow what happens with AI and watch and track as we go through organizations that are adopting it because there's more to come, obviously. And
That's going to be an interesting next year or so.
yeah, I think it'll be the next 6 months. I think we're going to see some pretty significant stuff happening, especially regarding legislation surrounding
Yeah.
it. I think there's going to be some stuff that's going to come out and might be great for businesses, as far as regulations are concerned, protection wise, but might not be great for the people who are developing into it. Some stuff might happen, but I mean, what do they say about technology? We're always like 10 years advanced of where we actually think we are. So
Yeah,
it's an interesting thing to
yeah,
think about.
that'll
So
be interesting.
yeah. Well, thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you. I really appreciate the
Yeah,
conversation.
it's a
All
great
right,
conversation. So take care. Have a great rest of your day.
take care. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Wow! Christina just gave us a masterclass in maintaining humanity while embracing technological transformation. I'm still thinking about her Michael Jordan analogy. Even the best player in the world kept practicing free throws after winning championships because he knew excellence required discipline, not just efficiency. Let's recap your 3 key takeaways. First, if we don't actively define what humanity means in our organizations, AI will define it for us, and we might not like the result. Second, the companies thriving with AI are those that focus on the intersection of what's best for clients, the company and the people, not just efficiency. And third, HR leaders must step up as AI ethicists and change leaders, not just compliance enforcers. Christina, thank you for challenging us to hold ourselves to a higher standard and for that powerful reminder that we can choose to exist or we can choose to be excellent. For everyone listening, you can connect with Christina at People Innovations. Come or find her on LinkedIn, where she's continuing to push the boundaries of people-centered innovation. Here's my challenge for you. This week, ask yourself, where in your organization are you optimizing for efficiency at the cost of humanity? And more importantly, what are you going to do about it? Because as Christina reminded us, wandering down that grocery aisle might lead you to discover something beautiful you never would have found by just reordering the same things. Thanks for joining us on the Future of Work with AI. We'll see you next time.